bear with me. It's not a morning of togetherness. Would you look over here, Nyanda, and see if you see it?
What am I looking for?
My usual.
That spirit.
Yeah, it's in here.
Would it be any of the texts here?
No,
No.
maybe. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It's okay, I've got it in here.
Not that stack. And it's not this or any
No.
of these? All right.
Remind me, this has come up 3 times. I need to do a land spirit offering later today. I'm not going to postpone the teaching to do it now, but when a text jumps into my face 3 times, it just jumped in from here also when I was looking for the other one. It usually means I'm supposed to do something with it.
Well, I did say with the microphones, that's something I consider.
Yes. Chuku kundu zongo gombo ye dorji sampagarab dorji dang shire singi bardu shin labdi de damazon tata tusum chi zog chen jupe lama la solwa deb again pema junila solwa Dorje chang chitilo narudang marpa mila gompo tatapa na pupadang palden drupa sog kargyu lama namla solwa deb ochen lama namla solwa deb Druchen lama namla solwa deb Shakchen lama namla solwa deb Yongzhendang nyendu lama namla solwa Palkondu zhongdang yerme pagun garab dorji jintrag pa jetidang nisume pai palamanam chitenter chong. Remember, in this text, to be perceiving Mandarava both simultaneously. It's not either or. Realities aren't an either or system. Something can be 2 different things at once. You can be a student and a mother. One doesn't stop when you perform in the other. So in the same way, this is Goddess Pandara Sarvati. This is primordial Yum Chenmo. And this is a woman named Mandarava and many other women through time and space. Not all of them human. Not all of them female. Some things don't have binary genders. Remember that Hri from last week that went every which way? It landed in a lot of places. Primordial mother of original purity. I hate small type. all-pervasive innate wisdom of the sphere of space, emanation of the 5 Buddha families, all Dakinis, bodhisattvas of the 3 times, O divine pure awareness holder of the dance of miraculous display on the supreme path of forever, goddess of all Vajra Buddha families, to you, Mandarava, in all your aspects, I prostrate. Glorious Yogini, mother of the Buddhas, in the exalted oceans of the pure realms, the play of your emanations arises as 100 million embodied forms. Throughout the many eons of existence, you display the dance of miraculous activity of mundane appearance. With stainless natural wisdom, you reveal the profound essence of the path. Outside of time, beyond place, where the seed syllables dance, in the Sambhogakaya realms of aliveness, of the vitality of clear light, where all arises as emptiness in emptiness. In perceiving this, the dance of symbols, we, sentient beings, cannot interpret it. So we impose interpretable stories upon it. They're made up in the context of our culture and personal experience, each and every one of us, or according to the patterns arising as our alaya venena, as consciousness. So we do that because we cannot perceive things as they are. The dance of emptiness as symbol, in emptiness without movement. Without exception, we bow to your lotus feet and attain true realization. Very basis of the appearance of all wisdom Dakinis, like space, queen consort of the space of truth, essence of Dhaka Dakini, the clouds of your miraculous radiance, the expanse of the nature of emptiness, realm of the Nirmanakaya, as the eternal manifestation of the 5 families, the dance of that pattern of symbols. Magical net of perfectly arranged manifestations across time and space. The pattern, the net-like, not is a net, can be analogized to a net, a web. The pattern of occurrence and non-occurrence, interpenetrating and interconnected across all the vastness of eternity and infinity. And in this there is no thing which arises or dissolves, no birth and death, no coming and going. And yet there is the miraculous dance of phenomena arising as emptiness, dissolving into emptiness in which no thing has ever occurred. Unwavering from this essential nature, I bow to you to encounter my own true nature. It's not just Mandarava who is this. You're this. Yeah, you. Every last one of you is this. The vitality of the universe manifesting in a pattern as a pattern. Karma is simply what we named the natural law as how that pattern manifests across time-space. It's not good or bad. It isn't why. It doesn't have a purpose other than the innate purpose of all Buddhas of the 4 times, to be there as they are in the 4th time. All Buddhas of the 3 realms, where all beings of existence of the 3 realms arise as all Buddhas of the 4 times in their natural state. It's not a purpose because it simply is. You can interpret it as a purpose. You can take it as your purpose while you are occupying a single bit in the time-space continuum, or at least think you are and feel you are. But it is beyond purpose or not purpose. It's really hard to talk to y'all about things that don't fit in words or concepts. By the blazing light of the Sun of Great Compassion, the obscurity of distorted visions are cleared. And in that instant, the ground and path of all dharmas are actualized, realized by all beings. Not someday. All the nows. This one too. So y'all, let go of trying to maintain your thises and that's that you obsess with. And just relax into what you really are. Not separate from any of this. Enlightenment occurs naturally in the state of the originally pure primordial mother. Emaho, in the sphere of Akanishta, in the paradise of dense array. Dense array is phenomena. When it is not named, made into something with a story around it. Dense array of clouds, insubstantial density of light. Objective appearance is the path of blissful wisdom of emptiness. The field of the 5 Buddha families and the 5 consorts. The 5 Buddha families, which are going to come up here again and again, symbolize the 5 wisdoms. They are the purified nature of the 5 categories of feeling. You see it clearly when you work with emotions in the Dzogchen method, where anger and fear, being flip sides of the same category, arise together in their true state without the grasping and shoving that normally goes on around them. Arise as the mirror-like wisdom of clarity. where competitiveness and comparativeness, the need to be perfect in order to be loved, that incredible unsatisfiedness with oneself that causes one to continue striving even when there's nowhere to get to. That, when you let go without shoving, without rejecting it, without shoving it away, simply release it into its own nature. It arises as the all-accomplishing wisdom. Amoghasiddhi is the symbol. Just as lust and that urge to merge, desire of that sort, arises as compassion, lust and loneliness, they're part of the same category of feeling. When released, they arise as the infinite compassion of Bodhicitta, without the least element of pity in there. It's as if, remember what it's like to be in love? How wonderful, how intense, how glowing. Now, take away the object, the singularity of that, and allow it open up to life itself, and be in love with all of it. Sky and form are the lovers. Recognize their nature and let them unite. Desire for stuff, wealth, food, more. The wish-fulfilling jewel of the southern direction of Padmasambhava. And in the center, despair, depression, unbearable sadness not about anything, exhaustion, can't do another thing. Let go of that without rejecting it or shoving it away. Let it open up into the vast, infinite eternity of the open and empty space-time continuum. Without rejecting the dance or the arisings, without rejecting feelings or vitality or aliveness, without rejecting love or fear or despair or want or comparison, without shoving or grabbing, let them resolve into the pattern of the dance. If you don't poke at them, that's what happens. The display of these realms of place and sacred grounds, the dance I'm talking to you about, of passion and thing, of phenomena both inner and outer. Upon one atomic particle dwell infinite emanations of teacher and assembly, revealing the Dharma according to individual needs of the regions of that particular world system. So you have the first four dimensions. Generally, width, or start with a line, a plane, a solid, existing with duration, and there's your first four. 5 is often said to be the dimension of imagination or dream time. 6 may well be considered micro and macrocosmic, bigger and smaller as dimensions, beyond even the smallness of particle physics, of quantum physics, worlds upon worlds. And we, a dust mote, a single particle in a dust mote, in a grain of pollen, in a greater world upon world, stacked to infinity in all directions of bigger and smaller. So many dimensions. It's not limited to what you, a Homo sapien, can think about. And all of these with sacred power spots corresponding to the symbols of the body, speech, and mind of all Buddhas, of form, intent, and awareness. In the unchanging, spontaneously present palace of the 3 traditions is the coppered color mountain, realm of lotus light, a place among many places. And there the Guru himself was seated, along with kings and disciples and subjects. Once we start getting into language here, you need to catch the context in which these stories were written down as this text, which was originally found in handwriting, scribbles. So it was written down by Yeshi Sogel, a person and a Buddha like you, although she was a lot closer perhaps than some of us to knowing it. She was nonetheless writing it down in a language, and the language had cultural connotations. There is no word in Tibetan for president, prime minister, Congress, governing council. There is only words for kings and subjects and ministers. So regardless of what is going on anywhere as far as forms of government, how it's set up, what the structure is, she had to use words in the Tibetan language that were known, which means the stories will be told using those words. This doesn't mean that throughout time and space all governments are kingdoms. This does not mean that throughout time and space they are all governed by kings and never by queens. Nagas are a matriarchy. And yet the head of Nagas, because the Tibetans cannot perceive that a woman would govern openly, they will call whoever is in charge him, because it's the only way they can interpret it. So you have to look at these stories in their cultural matrix of what could be said in the language in which they were written down. Even if somewhere there was a form of government other than kingdom, they didn't have the vocabulary to talk about. You should have seen me trying to explain to Rinpoche how a nuclear power plant worked in a language where wheels go this way and pray. They didn't even have wheeled vehicles back then, or roads to put them on. It wasn't that kind of place. So, although I will be using the words here, king, it simply means whoever the hell's in charge. Minister, it means whoever's orbiting around whoever's in charge, helping with that. Subject means simply the population of that place. In some places, at some times, in some of these stories, the government was hierarchical. And in other places, it wasn't particularly. There is more variety in manifestations than could be said here in the language it was being said in. So you need to understand the context in which the text was written down in order to understand not only what happened in the stories, but what it's pointing at. So this is talking about how this was transmitted by Guru Rinpoche to Yeshi Sogel in the Tibetan language. And Yeshi Sogel, who's writing it down, is a queen. She was a queen before she ever met Guru Rinpoche. She was a member of the King of Tibet's harem and a great political player with a lot of talent in that, rising quite high up. She switched from the king to Guru Rinpoche, but did not cease to be who she was. A great political player, fine politician and queen, very skilled at governing and manipulating a court. So many of the way things are described in here are in the context, using the language of a court, a political court, and language which maintains that. It was all she ever knew. So understand the stories in the context of where they happened and who told them. This is important to avoid being distracted by but why are they all kings? Didn't they have any other kind of governments? Why is it always guys in charge? Were women never in charge? Not in that culture at the time that it's told about. And remember, Guru Rinpoche was talking to that culture, teaching this. He chose 5 or 6 stories, a handful, of the infinite places the Hris landed. And he chose those 5 or 6 that would be intelligible to who he was talking to. He's not going to be able to tell Mandarava's past stories to infinity. And they are infinite. So he's going to choose by culture. More happened than is in this text or any other. Everything happens. Mandarava landed, arose, manifest as the essence of Dakinis in more places than we're going to talk about here. Do we have any questions come up yet? I've said a lot.
You've also taught quite a bit in there.
trying to give people the context for the stories so they become intelligible. Because they aren't if you just take them straight.
One question we have is, does Mandarava have a Pure Land? And if so, how do you find it in the Bardo?
Mandarava. That's limiting things a little bit. Again, we're getting into language, and the way you have enunciated limits it as if she were only a person. There is a Pure Land of Wisdom Dakinis. I will give you a prayer at the end of these teachings that you can use to locate it. However, Amitabha's Pure Land, she is considered the female aspect, or a female Amitabha. So if you wish to head for Dewa Chen, you may consider it hers. That's taking things to a bit of a simple level, but it'll work. Anything else?
What practice do we do to connect with the teachings of Mandarava?
I will be giving you that at the end. Do you all want that today? We'll see what people say. I was planning on giving it to you at the end of the teachings.
We'll give people a moment to respond. It's a question that came up last week as well, if I remember correctly. People wondering if there was a practice. Over on YouTube, a number of people are saying, yes, today, please. And other folks, let's see, a couple of votes for the end. But most people are saying yes today. At least over on YouTube, that's where they are. You Facebook folks, are you...
I'll think about it.
Yeah, if you have a preference, good to post it. And Facebook is saying we can wait.
Any other questions before I go on?
Can you comment on the Tibetan metaphor of magical net? And how that would be seen by Westerners?
It would depend on your Western culture. If you are a Native American Westerner, it's the great weaver's orb. Spider's orb. The net is the interconnected interrelationship between past and future. Between place and place, none of which exists in or as a solid existent thing, but which arises as a webwork of causes and conditions manifesting throughout without any actual thing happening. Did you get that? You have to understand a bit about the 8 consciousnesses of Buddhism and how they arise and interpenetrate to see how stories, which is a web of stories, it really is, are created, how they vary from person to person and yet run similarly within group karma. How karma exists both individually and in groups and manifests according to contributing causes. This is the web I'm talking about, the net. The first 6 consciousnesses are the 6 sense organs: sight, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch, and mental. Your yi, here, is where we locate it. It's a bunch of neural tissue around your digestive tract if you want to make a physical thing out of it. But your yi is the sense organ which perceives thoughts and feelings as a sensation. Qi runs through your energy channels. Your energy channels are actually infinite, except you hold them really tight and local so that they can't relax into their true infinite nature, which is rainbow body. But you get so busy maintaining your here and now and your place in it that you can't let go. And your energy channel through which you perceive your sense organs channels to the eyes, to the ears, also channels a big plexus, big chakra of energy channels joining each other as a circular, three-dimensional chakra thingy, wheelish. Except wheel is what it is when it's flat, it's three-dimensional. So your thoughts ride on the chi. They are the sound of the chi moving through your channels. You hear them as thoughts. Feelings are pretty much the same thing, but somewhat louder and more a slightly different sensation. So it's still a sense. You're sensing those. That's 6. The 7th consciousness is almost like a checklist. This is possible, this is not possible. That lies on top of all of those sensations and makes you interpret them as this rather than that. So many things you can't see because they are not possible in your pattern of the 7th consciousness to be existent. You've all heard the story about me being invisible once. Because I wasn't possible in that context. Perhaps I should tell it again here, even though it is an old story. Once when my teacher and I were traveling together, we went to visit an old friend of his from the caves who had been there at the time I was first there, but whom I'd never met due to his being in retreat or me being in retreat. So we didn't know each other, hadn't intersected. But he's from the caves, his old friend of Rinpoche's, and he had a little center somewhere. Not so small, it was very beautiful actually, very Tibetan. And he actually had Tibetan monks in it, a few, and a couple of Western monks. So it was very lovely. And we went to visit for lunch. And Rinpoche was going to give a teaching that evening of short version of the 3 words that strike the heart by Garib Dorji. So just the root text. And we were having lunch, the monks, and the Tibetans were talking in Tibetan, and Rinpoche and the old guy was having that, hey, whatever became a so-and-so conversation that you have with somebody you haven't seen for a long time, especially if they're a homie. And the Westerners were sort of having a Western conversation, and I was in between the two, sort of keeping it flowing by occasionally saying to the Westerners what the Tibetans were talking about or adding something in Tibetan if I knew what had become of so-and-so. And at some point, I don't know, somehow it became obvious to me during the meal that the old Lama was not looking at me, didn't seem to notice me. If I said something directly to him, it went right by. He ignored it. I thought maybe he's a bit hard of hearing, yada, yada, yada. even though I'd participated in the Tibetan conversation as well as the Western one. Anyway, it came after lunch. Rinpoche went off to lie down for a while, as did the old Lama. I decided to go out and get a cup of coffee, but politely took my leave of my host by going to thank the old Lama myself for lunch. And I walked in speaking his dialect. He's a homie. In Tibetan, I'm dressed like this, without the plaid blanket, because it wasn't that cold. And I thanked him for his lunch in perfectly, proper dialect and all. And he said, "Oh, yes, thank you," in English. And then he said, "Where are you from, dear?" And I answered once again in dialect. I know he speaks dialect. It's a Kampa dialect in Kamke. "Oh, well, I'm from Sopema, and my cave is over there. It's right next to Karma Punsok's cave, and then I built a new one up behind Lama Lamke." These are all people he knows. Locating myself, because that's what Tibetans do with each other. And where was your cave? We never met. And he says, "Oh, I see, dear. Is that in California?" So I decided I really wanted the cup of coffee. "Yes, that's in California. Thank you so much." And went out. Later, when it came time for Rinpoche to teach, he's sitting there up on the throne teaching. I'm on the little throne translating. I go through the whole teaching. And afterwards, after the receiving line and the head bonkies and the offerings made and everything, we're standing saying goodbye to people near the door with the old Lama. And the old Lama turns to Rinpoche and says in Tibetan, "I had no idea you spoke such perfect English." And Rinpoche said, "Oh, thank you." And then to me, the Tibetans point with their lips, wanting me to notice this. And so Rinpoche said goodbye to the old guy. I go to say goodbye. He's looking right past me at someone else, doesn't see me. So I go out with Rinpoche. We're quietly walking across the street to the parking lot, across the street, walking through the parking lot. And suddenly Rinpoche stops, looks up at what appears to me to be an empty sky, sunset, dusk, goes, "Holy 3 jewels, Lena, get a load of that." I look up, I don't see anything. "What? Where, Rinpoche?" He looks at me with his sad look. "Oh, you too?" And there the conversation ended. I always wondered what was in the sky there that I couldn't see. You see, it wasn't possible for this old monastery-raised Kargyu Tibetan for there to be a female Nagmo translator. That would be like someone having their dog next to them translating. No, it wouldn't be possible. Must be ventriloquism. Why they're putting on that act, I don't know, but no, dogs don't speak. So he managed to interpret whatever he saw, filling the hole in space that was me. Well, I don't know what he interpreted as. You do it too. This is the 7th consciousness. You're almost like a checklist. Can be, can't be. What makes it? What's it made of? Everything you've ever seen. Every interaction you've ever had. Every book you've ever read. Every movie you've ever watched. Every conversation you've ever heard, including the commercials. It's made of that. And not just in this life, but far into past lives as well. It's a clump of interpretations of light, sound, sensations of light, sound, texture, scent, taste, feeling, thought. It's an interpretation of that clump as existent, real, and this rather than that. This is a donut. I love donuts. Our interpretations may differ. The eighth consciousness is this whole mix of sensations and assumptions about the meaning of the sensations that creates the feeling of I. That creates an entity-ness as a clump. And that's where the karma sticks. It's called the Lama in Sanskrit. Storehouse of karma. It's not a storehouse. It's a clump of all of that. All the sensations, including mental sensations. And the superimposed ises and isn'ts, eithers and ors, interpretation, possibility, real, not real on that, which has gotten really fucked up during the isolation. That's why everybody's going crazy. Because usually that is something that is strongly interwoven with those you associate with, since it's made up of all your interactions. And without associating with others much, it wobbles. And people in their desperation online associate with like-minded people and go down some very interesting sets of interpretations of things. Warning, doom scrolling causes both paranoia and indigestion. This is what you are. This is your heap. The pile that thinks it's you. That's the eighth consciousness. I'm me. All of that together, taken together, is me, and I hold this me, and I maintain this me. And this me is made of that which karma is the natural law of how it pulls together, how it creates. Understanding this allows you to understand that all stories told are within that context. So Mandarava, the woman, with her adventures, her movement from ignorance to enlightenment, which she repeats again and again in each life, in order to, no, not even in order to, because that is the pattern of showing, the dance, the way bodhisattvas dance in the showing, how to do it from nowhere to everywhere that isn't anywhere. Making a little sense to you now? How the stories happen? Here's a story. Long ago, in a time long ago in a galaxy far away, there was a land known as Kotami, and in that a place known as Salpatra. The last king in this line, whose name was Indradevi, took as his consort a wealthy merchant's daughter, Taye Dezema. One day it occurred to them to go on holiday to a beautiful place with many lakes and blooming flowers. There was a mountain there called Nematora. And in this place was a deep lake, which was the palace of the Naga king, Malashi. Now, Nagas are a matriarchy. I think, I don't know that they actually have kings rather than queens, but remember, Tibetan context. There were many small ponds and beautiful fields there, so they went there to holiday. They gathered it together, and the king, of course, going, brought many good things to give and trade with the Nagas, beautiful jewels and other things. And when he got there, he presented these beautiful offerings of substances that they'd gathered to the Nagas, who were very pleased, and they had a great party interspecies, which doesn't happen that much. More common in those days, with Nagas and humans that night. But later, in the middle of the night, the king got word that another faction of Nagas, who were separate, different group, were planning to attack. Then the king, who had great weapons, took one of his weapons, and by the power of that weapon, many sparks shot forth, penetrating the unruly Nagas. Not the ones he was partying with. Different political group. Nagas have a lot of politics. And they were reduced to ashes and dissolved into non-duality. So they won the battle. So there's been a big party. And then in the middle of the night, when everybody's just winding down from the party, an enemy attack and a big battle. And the king has won. So that night, finally, the battle's over, the party's done. Somewhere on towards morning, the king and queen get to sleep. And they have very auspicious dreams. And they both had received them, it turned out, when they discussed when they got up later in the day. So they decided to ask hang on, I left something out. No, that happened during the night, and they decided when they got home they would ask a sage, an oracle, what that meant. Then the Nagas came. It's the next day after the big party and the battle. And since the king had protected these Nagas as well by defeating their political opponents, so they're really getting to be good friends. The Nagas bring the king beautiful offerings, 7 varieties of precious jewel. And these are wish-fulfilling jewels, so they all have names. And they offer this to the king, and they ask him to start up a trade treaty with them. So let's get this regular. I want you to make regular, timely offerings to us, and we'll make them to you. Let's get it going between our cultures and between our kingdoms. So the king asks the Nagas what offerings would please you. And the Nagas say, well, we have a lot of wealth and jewels and things, although we do like such things. But what we'd really like is offerings of medicines and grains and treasure vases, which you have. So the king offered the 5 varieties of medicines and grains and jewels and treasure vases, crops that need no harvest. I wonder what that was. Some tech that we don't have yet. Then the king took the jewels which had been given by the Nagas and placed them in the carriage and transported them to the kingdom. When they checked with a sage, the sage said those are really auspicious signs. Then one night, when the king and queen were having sex, they saw a dazzling bright light that appeared to them. The queen thought it dissolved into the king, while the queen thought it dissolved into the queen. 3 months later, she began to feel a little morning sick and realized she was with child. Once, when the king was visiting his rather pregnant queen by now, he heard words coming from her womb. She heard them too. The child singing, "Blissful, blissful, I feel so blissful. This vessel, my mother's body, is a blissful paradise, a place of the conquerors. The red and white bodhisattva nectar of male and female is the bliss of method and wisdom." You understand that, right? The red and white drops, the tigli, and the blood, when they come together and merge, this is the great bliss. It is the symbol of the merging of method, which is bodhisattva, and wisdom as sunyata. Bodhisattva in emptiness as emptiness without other than being bodhisattva. It's not deleted by emptiness. It is its true nature. And this bodhisattva, great-hearted, open-heartedness, ninji, is the nature of the alive awareness of emptiness. They're the same thing. We symbolize them as coming together. This is the male and female aspects of Yab-Yum. The sun and the moon. The moon is the masculine, the sun is the feminine, different from Western system. The placental covering of white silk is the bliss of great warmth and the sensation of softness. The motion of the vital air within my mother's body is the blissful motion of 26,000 vital energies. The central channel and the 5 principal networks of channels are the bliss of the paradise of the 5 families and the 3 enlightened embodiments. Remember, 5 dance of 5 Buddhas, 5 families, 3 embodiments, body, speech, and mind. The stages of development of the branches are the bliss transcending the 5 paths and the 10 stages. The activity of my mother's bodily motions is the bliss of the Dakini's song. And I am the great consort, Mandarava, female aspect of Amitabha, light beyond compare. Blissfully appearing for the benefit of sentient beings. My essence originates from the Father Akshobhya, and emptiness is liberated from the lotus. Do you follow this? Unlike most of the Tibetan teachings, where the time if you've done any Lam Rim, you will have been told that the time in the uterus is unpleasant. It's a story. As easily tell you how pleasant it is. How will you experience your time in the uterus? How did you? It depends on your karma. I liked it. It was quite pleasant for me once I started thinking a little bit. It was a slow process of noticing being. And around the time I did that, I wiggled a lot and got born. But that's just memories. Are they true? I've always remembered it. That's why I had trouble originally with the Lam Rim teachings about how terrible it is, because it wasn't terrible. It was quite pleasant. This is much more like what I remember, although I wasn't talking yet. But how you perceive and experience is by your karma. You might have a terrible time of it. You might have a good time of it. You know those people who get a simple cold and they think they're dying? Guy colds, we call them. I have been told that I get guy colds. Yeah. However, other people get a cold. Oh, I can take the day off work. I kind of needed a day to relax anyway. I'm going to get caught up on watching my movies that I've been wanting to see. Yeah, cool. Take some Sudafed, kick back, maybe some hot rum and lemon. I'm good. Somebody make me some chicken soup? Even nicer. So you see, it's the same sensations. For one person, it's terrible. Yeah, I admit I fall into that sometimes. But for another person, it's quite a nice little holiday. Yeah, you sniffle a bit, but whatever. You could actually do it either way, depending on your karma. Some people, when something untoward happens, think they're having an adventure, and it's nice because they won't be bored. Other people, when something untoward happens, feel anxiety and get terribly upset about it, according to their karma. This is why I teach you it is so important to pay attention to karma. It's how you steer your experience. After 10 months, the queen gave birth. While giving birth, it didn't hurt. The queen experienced it as a blissful experience. For those of you who didn't like giving birth, some people do. My daughter says it was an orgasm. That's why she did it so many times. She likes it. She says it's a really cool sensation. So again, according to your karma, for some people it's terrible, scary, terrifying, horrible, hurts. For others, that's intense, but it's cool. And the daughter here was born in the rishi posture. That's with her knees tucked up to her chest and the arms like around them. And in the call. Now, what's unusual is for a woman to have an easy, blissful time giving birth to a baby in the call. At birth, the child exclaims, I came from the great expanse of space of empty bliss, O Father and Mother of great kindness. I respectfully bow down to you and pray to reciprocate your kindness. They named her Pandaravasini, Lady of the White Cloth, because she was born in the call. Also, Kirti Bahadra, famous Lady of Excellence, because the fame of her birth was widespread. And then they asked the sage, who had told them previously that those were auspicious signs, whether she would be the queen of a great universal ruler. And he answered, as Mandarava is the mother of all Buddhas and their heirs, do not hold her as one who holds a place in samsara. And when she was about 11, in her 11th year, which is, we would say, Tibetans are a little older. So when she was 11, she sat at the feet and entered the path of the Dharma of the Buddha of that time and place, who was Buddha Ratnasiri. He declared her to be the Vajra family consort, the female pure awareness holder. Who for 89,000 years was fully enlightened with indivisible, the Buddha of unlimited life, Amitayas. And so she entered the path of Dharma, renouncing samsara in the place called Nemitora. That's near where the Nagas live. She developed clairvoyance and other miraculous powers and turned the wheel of the Dharma boundlessly for 16,000 fortunate disciples. Now here, it's interesting because she has talked about a woman who is studying on a path, but who has also always been a Buddha. Does that sound familiar to you? Like maybe you, who somewhere in the infinite of time and space will have achieved enlightenment. And since that enlightenment is not limited by the 3 times of past, present, and future, it pervades, always was, and will be. So you yourself are a manifestation of the Buddha, as well as a fool, sentient being. These 2 things are not in conflict. Can you see this? It's not either or. Either or is some of that crap in your 7th consciousness about what can be and what can't be, that you're sticking on reality that you made up, or somebody made up and told you, or you got someplace. But it's not real. All the Buddhas of the five Sambhogakaya realms, we're going into that 5 pattern again, acknowledged golden Pandravasini's enlightenment. They acknowledged her as the one who for countless eons of time, while the life expectancy was measureless, had remained indivisible, an aspect, the female aspect of Amitabha. Remember, all Buddhas have a male and female aspect. It's not their wife. That's a missimplification of things. Consort is not wife. Consort is other half. They are even. The male aspect, the female aspect are together one thing, not separate. Not Amitabha and his wife. That's so culturally fucked up. Rather, the male and female aspects of the energy symbolized as Amitabha. She has vowed to manifest herself in ways inconceivable to the mind in order to empty the depths of samsara. So what we're looking at here is the beginning of the stories, of the symbols coming into stories, becoming more and more local, comprehensible. This is the first story, but it's borderline comprehensible in normal thought. You have to admit a few extra dimensions in order to think about it effectively. A couple of languages won't hurt either. This is where it's called her attainment of enlightenment, but it is also called her recognition as a manifestation of enlightenment, her self-recognition of enlightenment. Mother and child luminosity unite. That's this story. Can you see it? I'm pausing for questions.
One question is, can you practice consort yoga without a human partner?
Yes, in fact, it's a lot easier. You don't have to clean up after them.
Is it possible to change how you experience something, whether good or bad? Or is your karma for any particular experience set in stone from past actions?
It is not set in stone from past actions. You can change it. That's what Treksha does. Instead of experiencing it the way you think, feel, perceive yourself experiencing it, you see it for what it is, emptiness dancing in emptiness, and you remain in that open awareness of experience for some time, because it's practice. And that changes, of course that changes the experience. Everything changes the experience. A shot of whiskey changes the experience. They're very manipulatable. Problem is that a shot of whiskey, then it's kind of nice for a while, then you got a friggin' hangover. So I'm not recommending that as a permanent solution. Treksha works better, no hangover. Next question.
Is Mandarava associated with longevity practices in general?
Yes, she is. Because she holds the vase of eternal youth. The vase of eternal youth is the symbol of timelessness. Outside of time and space, there is no birth and death. This has been shifted to longevity around here.
Can you speak more about karma being the way you steer your experience and working with that?
Gewa leads to happiness. Digpa leads to misery. By intentionally performing as much gewa as you possibly can and avoiding as much digpa as you possibly can, you will go from happiness to happiness. The only problem with this is that happy is not out. You have to keep maintaining this by continuously creating Gewa. If you forget or you get tired of it or you get distracted, oops. So what you want to do is combine the practice of Gewa with Trekcha. Trekcha leads out, where out is not other than in, but we'll call it out for now. Gewa makes the journey much more comfortable. The 6 paramitas, which I have taught recently online, give you an instruction in how to practice Gewa. The details. Next.
Why do we always refer to the female aspect of a Buddha, but not of a Buddha being the male aspect of a female being?
Culture. Just culture. The Tibetan culture is very hierarchical and very male-oriented. So was the North Indian culture at the time of the current Buddha. So everything which has been taught is contextualized within that culture. It's just cultural context. We also always talk about Dakinis and fail to mention all those lovely Dakas running around with their shirts off, doing stuff. Dakas are cute. Dakinis are pretty cute too, but what do I know? Next question.
Could you talk about Mandarava's ornaments, weapons, and tools? And are there stories about how she came to hold these?
Yes, but I'm going to have to look that up for you all and see if I can find any information on it in a couple of texts, because I do not have that in my RAM at the moment. I know about the vase of long life, which is one of the things she holds, but I'm going to have to check on the bow and arrow in this, because there's a couple of different meanings that sometimes means. And I have to see what's emphasized in this one. So give me another question and let me write down for next week, so I'll have that for you. Okay, I'll be looking it up. Anything else?
What is the meaning behind Pandavarasini being described as emanating from Buddha Akshobhya and being the Vajra consort, and then as being that of Buddha Amitabha's consort, Padma, whom we most associate her with?
Akshobhya is often seen in the east. Amitabha is always seen in the west. The binary of the Vajra lotus dichotomy, where of the families, oh God, I'm going to have to get into describing this as consorts and families. So you've got 5 Buddha families, and people are generally, just as they're usually predominantly earth element or predominantly fire element, they're usually predominantly one family or another. There are signs in the way the palms look and in how the labia swirl that you can look at to see the family, to perceive which family. So it is quite common for male Nagpas to be born as Vajra family. It has a steady, grounded, unshakability, feet firmly planted in the sky aspect. Eastern direction. Mirror-like wisdom which sees everything with equanimity. It is quite common for female Buddhas who become famous to be of the lotus family. This is a linguistic mnemonic to be actually so. It is a way of symbols. So the lotus family is naturally drawn to the opposite. There's a pull. So, okay, Amitabha of the western direction and Akshobhya of the eastern direction are not actually separate. The union of Bodhisattva and Sunyata are symbolized by the union of yin and yang aspect, by the union of the lotus and the vajra, which are also euphemisms for private parts. A penis is a dorji, and not the vagina, but the whole area. What do you call it, technically?
I think it's the pudenda, is it?
The pudenda, the whole pudenda, is considered a pema, or padma, a lotus. So these are symbols. Everything is symbols throughout cultures which coalesce into experiences. Am I making any sense to you at all? So in this lexicon of symbols, depending on context, she is either Vajra family, female aspect, of Akshobhya, of long life, beyond time and space, the beyond time and space of the infinite mirror that reflects phenomena in emptiness as emptiness, which is a wisdom aspect, or the female aspect of infinite light, which is the essence of the vitality of Bodhisattva, which is a more male aspect of the lotus family, Bodhisattva being male. What I'm trying to show you is a dance of symbols, how they move and change, and things are not one thing or another thing, but in context, they dance around together, interpenetrating as symbols. So the easy short answer is, in one context it can be seen one way, and in another context it can be seen another way. And I think I went to the trouble of trying to tell you all just how that works in possibly more detail than I had good words for. Oops. Got an easy one for me?
Is Mandarava, can she also be considered as white Tara?
Yes, in fact, in the practice I will be giving you, it isn't so much a specific Mandarava practice as a prayer to all the wisdom Dakinis, and Mandarava is in here, Yeshi Sogel is in here, all the Dakinis you can think of, including Tara, is in here. It's a very powerful practice to invoke, become, manifest, recognize. Great Mother Ocean of Wisdom. Other questions?
What I have left isn't related much to Mandarava. They're more general practice questions.
Let me try one or two.
Okay, how can we practice Dzogchen and Lamrim teachings together?
By doing it? How? By not doing it at the same time. Actually, Dzogchen will make your practice of Lamrim easier because without Dzogchen, it's very hard to understand that either ors aren't real. And so when they teach you one thing in one part of Lamrim and seem to contradict themselves in another part of Lamrim, and some other teaching seems to contradict that, you can get your pretzels all in a weird twist without Dzogchen. So sometimes sit Dzogchen, and sometimes read Lamrim. But don't try to do them at the same time. Next.
Is there a list of specific examples of Digpa and Gewa?
Yes, but it's going to be cultural. The Catholics have one. The Tibetans have one. I'll look around and see if I can find something like that. I'm sure there's a list in the Galupas, and I actually had that teaching. Over at FPTMC, they've got to have one.
I'm following the Extraordinary Nundro course, and do the teachings there align with Mandarava practice?
Not specifically, no. But they are not in conflict. And all teachings point at the same thing. So they can synergize if you take them right.
What is the technique method to make leftover food visible to Predis?
I'm looking for a piece of leftover food to show you with.
Good question.
I will have some sampa next week and I'll show you. It's a specific shape and mantra. It's one of those that you gotta see it.
What is Trekchen?
Dzogchen meditation, also known as GOM.
And can you tell us more about Togyal? Is it necessary to practice it in addition to Trekcha?
You can't practice it until you're damn good at Trekcha. Every so often I get emails from people who are practicing Togyal without the necessary Trekcha skills. And it won't work. You have to sit in Trekcha while you do Togyal. If you can't stay in Trekcha while shit happens, you'll never manage to deal with the display. And you'll do yourself a mischief. If I were to teach you how to rub your stomach and pat your head while riding a bicycle, it would be important that you had the skill of riding a bicycle well before you tried to do that while riding a bicycle. Otherwise, you're going to fall off and do yourself a mischief, and it won't work. Next.
How do we know or tell which Buddha family and avatar or emanation belongs to? You mentioned earlier about directions.
It's usually in the text somewhere. color will give you a hint. Yellow golden colors are often towards the south, meaning Padmasambhava family. White colors are often towards the east, meaning Vajrasattva family or Akshobhya. Red colors are often to the west, and green colors are often to the north, with blue being towards the center. I can immediately think of several exceptions to this. So it's a hint, not a rule. Put down those rules. Nothing is fixed. Even Gewa and Digpa are situational. Killing is Digpa. Giving medicine to a child with a painful ear infection is Gewa, even though you are killing the bacteria in the ear. Context. Situational. You need to go past lists and rules of this family and that family. This thing is that thing and the other thing. You cannot get such a pattern to carry past the extreme localness of here and now. And even then, it will be a distortion. These belief systems of ises and isn'ts, it's like this and like that, but not like this and like that. How can it be this and that? This is all that seventh consciousness, ignorance. Marigpa, obscuration, the consciousness that arises as assumptions of reality. Not real.
Do Tibetan deities such as Tara get upset if one practices Mandarava practice or goes on to Amitabha?
But they're all the same thing. No. No, not in the least. They don't get jealous. They're not jealous gods. That's a Christian thing, jealous gods. Or was it Jewish? I can't remember. One more.
Can you teach us how to do consort practice?
No. No, I refer out for that. When you are ready, there's a couple lamas I might send you to, but I'm a little too old to teach that. I suppose it would rejuvenate me, but I'm not sure. I can't be bothered. No. One more story. We're getting from the broad down to what was seen around here. Of course, around here is relative. Now I think we're in this galaxy. Only a few eons ago, not sure on what planet yet, but the country is Sukvana. And the king was a holy man. And the queen was high caste. And the name of the prince was Suryagarbha, essence of the sun. When the time came for this Prince Suryagarbha to take a queen, word went out that he was searching. Now there was a nearby country where the king's name was Shubha and the queen was Genlema. They had 7 sons and 1 daughter. So the ministers are going around for Suryagarbha to try to find him a bride. And one of them, traveling in foreign lands where they would find a suitable bride, sees the daughter of Shubha and Genlema be decked in jewels, and she sees him, the minister, and they have a conversation. The minister tells why he's there, and somehow in conversation, Prince Suryagarbha comes up. She asks how he's doing since the minister is from there. The minister thinks it's unusual that she knows the boy's name, but explains why he is in there. And she brings him to the queen, who brings him to the king. And again, the explanation and the conversation goes down. And they say that Prince Suryagarbha, the minister says, has a very spiritual mind, and he's beautiful and young and strong, all the wonderful things. And they're looking for, of course, a girl who's his equal. So the one daughter in King Varnu's family, whose name means dancer, is so wonderful that I don't want to give her in marriage to anyone, the king says. So the minister returns with a refusal. And he tells the king, the father of Suryagarbha. And so correspondence begins, letters written in gold, many gifts are exchanged. Apparently, Suryagarbha's family wants Natyendri to join and marry. During the period, Suryagarbha has an excellent dream. He dreams that a white light with a reddish hue arose from the east and dissolved into him. Reddish white. Bodhicitta. Sunyata. He in turn melted into light and became a Hung. From the Hung a Shri emerged. To encompass 3 galaxies, the universe contents became ablaze with 5 colored lights, and all was perceived as the essence of the 2 syllables. Boundless light rays proceeded to encompass the 3 galaxies, and whenever the light shone, seed syllables appear. The king dreamt of a hollow crystal vessel that contained a white silken cloth. Feeling that this dream was auspicious, more letters were sent. An audience was requested. Whether or not to let him marry Natyendri. She was born in the call, 8th child, 7 sons. And she displayed the ability to dance at birth. Hence she was named Woman of Dance. Finally, since nothing clear was coming of the negotiations, it was decided to let her decide her own future. They agreed that the princess herself should choose. So they said to the princess, her parents, "Many countries want your hand in marriage. They all asking to take you to your kingdom. Tell us what you want to do." And she said in response, "These troublesome questions and explanations that bring joy and sorrow do not affect me. I have no intention of maintaining the worldly affairs or responsibilities of any kingdom. With the awakened mind of altruism, my motivating force, my actions must flow in accordance with the power of previous deeds." She's saying that she's not trapped in the hopes and fears of life, but that she's simply riding the horse of karma where it will go, allowing the display to display itself as it will, with the vow of Bodhisattva as the reins. Before this life, I lived in the Shukravati paradise as the supreme consort and goddess Pandravasini. Pardon my Sanskrit pronunciation. I have no other purpose than to fulfill the needs of sentient beings. By the force of previous prayers, Prince Suryagarbha is an emanation of Avalokitesvara, Chenrezig. And I have generated Bodhisattva. I shall not take an ordinary husband whose body is the cause for leading others to a lower rebirth. I shall escape while everyone is around so that there's no political issues. I shall simply sneak out and go unnoticed to the palace of the future king Suryagarbha. Father, mother, practice well while I'm gone. My advice to you is to achieve liberation. I have no attachment to samsara. Through the method of great compassion, ninji, bodhisattva, I shall work unceasingly for sentient beings. I have come to guide you all to the state of the Aryas. Then the princess escaped from the kingdom with an attendant. 7 days into the journey, the attendant fell ill and passed away. The princess performed all the necessary rites of transference of consciousness, thus guiding her to a pure realm. 7 days and nights more passed. One day in the early morning hours, Prince Suryagarbha had a dream. Avalokitesvara, who he is also, not either or. You talk to yourself, right? So, Avalokitesvara spoke to him. My son, now you must arise from your sleep. To the east of here, the daughter of the king of sages, Natendri, by her clairvoyant powers has escaped from her kingdom, the blissful land of the gods where many kings and princes still make aggressive overtures for her hand in marriage. Now she is coming to meet you and is presently en route, a distance north of here. Go find her. He announces, so the prince, Suryagarbha, announces to the court that she's coming and that he would go and that she would join him for the sake of all sentient beings. And they set forth with ministers and conveyances to meet her on the route. After greeting her, they would return to the kingdom. From the eastern direction, they all craned their necks. Swirling mass of rainbow-colored light rays that appeared in space. A rain of flowers filled the sky. and cloud offerings suitable for gods, nagas, and humans alike. Netendri, herself surrounded with blazing light, became visible. Meanwhile, all the kings who had been seeking her for their princes back in her homeland, they began to suspect that she'd done a getaway. And they started searching for her here and there. Nobody found her. Eventually, they had to return to their own kingdom, empty-handed and exhausted. When they returned to the capital, having met there outside the city, a great festival was declared, and the whole kingdom engaged in several days of vast festival. King Varunasena, the old king, ruled the kingdom for another 3 years. After about 3 years, he called Suryagarbha and Natyendra together and formally enthroned them to govern the kingdom. Many alms were given to the poor, and another great festival occurred. Natyendra gave teachings on the vehicle of secret mantra. In the end, the entire kingdom of 100,000 people attained enlightenment as a single mandala. Little bit closer in now to our subscribed reality. Slowly over the course of the teachings, we become closer and closer to what we are familiar with calling real. But it's not more real. You just think it is. It's that seventh consciousness that's given you a hassle. I speak symbolically and euphemistically. There are 10,000 explanations for how it works, and none of them are true. Relax, do your practice. Any questions?
Let's see. What does secret mantra refer to?
Tantra. All tantric symbolic practices, including the parts you say, monlam, and the seed syllables, magic words, mantra, which are not publicly disclosed in many cases. That whole pattern of practice called Tantra or Vajrayana is secret mantric vehicle. Next.
Excuse me. Where does chud practice fall in this, if it does at all?
In what? Mandarava? Doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't. Not a practice that she particularly does. It is a part of the secret mantric vehicle. I don't know if she taught it here or not. Machig chud is much later on. This is down in India even before Yeshi Sogel. And Machig is after. Troma chud is old, and I believe how old? I'd have to check. I'm not sure. Maybe one of you can check for me. Troma chud is how old? I know there's a chud lineage from Zhangzhou, which I'm not as familiar with, and I'll have to check on Troma when that chud was written. Or you can check for me if any of you know. Next.
How do we find out which Buddha is dreaming us? Is there a practice for this?
But there isn't a which Buddha. Buddha, thus gone, is neither singular nor multiple. All the Buddhas dream all the sentient beings, but they're all the same Buddha. Only the sentient beings think they're different. In the Dharmakaya nature of mind, the infinitude of open awareness, empty and luminous, it's not variegated. That luminosity, the clear light nature of Dharmakaya nature of mind, that innate and natural luminosity is the vitality, the innate life force of aliveness of sentient beings. It is the awareness. As it begins to manifest in the pure vision of rainbow lights of Nirmanakaya, before it is erroneously interpreted by the seventh consciousness, seventh level of consciousness, it is neither multiple nor singular, but colors and shapes are differentiatable. Within time, time begins to arise, but it isn't solid. Oh, hell. I can't tell you about it. Look at your mind with your mind. Infinite and open, without the boundaries of is or isn't, placeness. Vast beyond knowing. Awake, aware, alive. As the clear light shines through the prism of vitality, it fragments, is broken into multiple rainbows. Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. Without erroneously interpreting the rainbows, grasping at one or shoving at another. Leave them be as they are. Mind looking in its entirety without limitation. Don't make anything out of it. When I try to tell you certain things, the words entangle, and I see them leading away from what I am pointing at. Any other questions? Then we are complete for today. Nge wadi nyur dudam che che Sure. I'll see you tomorrow.
You